All right, fact checkers, it is a brand new year, but we've got the same great coffee sponsor. So if you head over to Fox and Sons Coffee and use the promo code FCT for fact check this, you get 15% off any order of $25 or more. Also, be sure to check out the new blends that Steve's got over there. We've got the Den Blend 2 Electric Boogaloo. This is a medium roast coffee. If the dark roast was a little too robust for you, but the light was not quite getting what you needed, check out the medium roast. It is fantastic. And also, they've got a brand new one. It's the Costa Rica Honey Prep. Now, this is the same great coffee, but with a little bit of a floral aroma. You're going to really want to check this one out. So head over to Fox and Sons Coffee and use the promo code FCT at checkout to get that 15% off any order over $25. Let's get started. This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast. All right, Fact Check This, and today we're going to use a couple older articles to lead us into a more recent article. So we're just going to jump right into it because there is quite a bit to cover with the three different articles. So we'll start with this one. Joe Biden bragged about getting a Ukrainian prosecutor fired. Now, this was from 15 or 16 was when this initially happened, when the firing happened, I should say. The president said that he had instructed the then president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, to fire the prosecutor general in efforts to tackle corruption. And see, this can take us into a whole other thing. So back in 2014, the U.S. government, under the Obama administration, with the help of Joe Biden, very directly, staged a full-on coup in Ukraine, removed the then powers that be, and put Petro Poroshenko in charge. Petro Poroshenko was straight up a pawn of the U.S. government and NATO. Also a pretty devout Nazi, but that's neither here nor there. So anyway, we're going to go through the article real quick. On January 23rd, 2018, during a Council on Foreign Relations discussion, then Vice President Joe Biden was asked about Ukraine's prospects for peace. Biden pursued an anti-corruption policy in Ukraine in 2016 that included a call for the resignation of the country's top prosecutor, who had previously investigated Burisma. Burisma sounds familiar, doesn't it? And we all know where that comes from, right? Okay, so Biden recounted a story in which he allegedly told then President Petro Poroshenko that the U.S. would not release $1 billion in loan guarantees unless Poroshenko fired the prosecutor general as part of an anti-corruption efforts. Anti-corruption in Ukraine. It's like the ultimate oxymoron. I looked at them and I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours," Biden told the crowd, taking a long look at his watch for effect. "If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money." Well, son of a bitch. And here the audience laughed. He got fired. The statement drew immediate criticism, appearing on propaganda channels Russia Today and Sputnik. Conspiracy theorists adopted the statement as evidence that Biden ordered the firing of the prosecutor because his son, Hunter Biden, had been serving on the board that the prosecutor was investigating. However, Hunter Biden had not been serving on the board at this time. That's a lie. According to BuzzFeed, aides close to Biden had said that Joe Biden had made a blunder in his remarks, and Biden's staff was also concerned that the remarks would create tension between the U.S. and Ukraine. Poroshenko had reportedly been frustrated with Biden's statements. At the time of the Obama administration, Biden and many prominent names said that the removal of the prosecutor was official U.S. policy. Hunter Biden joined the board of Ukraine's national gas company Burisma Holdings in 2014. An investigation into Hunter Biden's position in Ukraine was found that his ties were awkward and problematic, but ultimately had no impact on the Obama administration's policymaking, and Joe Biden had been cleared of wrongdoing. Of course, an investigation done by the people who are benefiting from his involvement are going to say that there's no wrongdoing. And especially like when they talk about literally 2 paragraphs earlier that Hunter Biden had not been serving on the board at this time. And then 2 paragraphs later, they go into the timeline when he was serving on the board. Like, it's clearly complete and total bullshit, right? Like, you can see through this, hopefully. It's the same as all the stuff that I talked about with, the medical evidence-based medicine and the way that they conduct their experiments and the way they do their testing on that. That's the same way they do these investigations. The people who are directly benefiting from the people who are involved in the investigation are making sure that the investigation turns up exactly what they think the investigation should turn up, and that's that nobody did anything wrong ever. The whole thing is a fucking game. It's a scam. Once you understand that the game is rigged, then you're ready to start playing the game. However, Hunter Biden is currently under investigation for tax fraud in his business dealings, and this investigation is separate from Hunter Biden's time in Ukraine. An anonymous source told USA Today that the investigation had nothing to do with corruption allegations raised by Republicans. The details of the investigation are still unclear. Critics have said that the president must show his commitment to justice by treating the investigation with due seriousness. In 2019, Yuri Latensko, the current prosecutor general in Ukraine, said that neither Hunter Biden nor Burisma was now the focus of an investigation, and that there was no evidence of wrongdoing. Naturally. On June 15th, 2020, the Washington Post reported that former Ukraine Prosecutor General Ruslan Ruvaskia, blah, 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 audited the many outstanding case files looking into Burisma and said he found no evidence of wrongdoing by the Bidens. Again, naturally. According to Reuters, in 2016, a Kiev district court said that it found no evidence of criminal wrongdoing by Burisma president and owner Zlochevsky. I'll get these names right eventually. Zlochevsky, and ordered the prosecutor general's office to remove him from the authorities' wanted list. In 2017, Burisma said all investigations against the company and Zlochevsky had been closed after the company paid an additional $180 million or Harvinas, or $7.44 million in taxes, Reuters reported. Joe Biden had indeed bragged about getting the then prosecutor general fired, but there is no evidence that this is linked to Hunter Biden. Now, this article came out in December of 2020, just for reference on where this comes from. So we're going to bounce over here to the next article. And this one is from mid-2021. Fired Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin files a federal complaint against Joe Biden. And I'm going to kind of breeze through this one. I'm not going to actually read the whole thing. The headline kind of says everything that you need to know. So this kind of retreads some of what we were talking about in the last article. Joe Biden made the remarks during a meeting on foreign policy specialists that he had threatened Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko in March of 2016 that the Obama administration would pull $1 billion in U.S. loan guarantees, sending the former Soviet republic towards insolvency if it didn't immediately fire Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin. And Biden also suggested that Obama was in on the threat. And see, this is a really important part of all of this. I'm going to pop out of that for just a second. Ukraine is the most corrupt nation in Europe, period. Like there's no argument about that. They wouldn't even be given a sniff at NATO or the EU for literally decades. I mean, since Ukraine has come into existence, it hasn't been given a sniff at joining any of these like governing bodies because their corruption is so world renowned and so out of control. Ukraine was reliant on this on the U.S. billions that have been honestly getting. So the whole background of the coup and overthrowing their government and everything else is this has been a huge money laundering service for the better part of pushing 10 years now. 2014 is when the whole thing went down. So we're moving into year number 9. And it's only gotten exponentially worse just in the last year. Obviously, the whole Russia-Ukraine war thing is what's really propelling this thing even further into just absolute ridiculousness. But for the years leading up to that, like prior to the Russia-Ukraine war, the only thing that kept Ukraine solvent was all of the billions of US dollars that were being funneled into it, getting washed through their energy and textile markets, and then getting funneled back to U.S. politicians and business people. So like the whole thing is just a giant fucking circle jerk of money going in and money going out, and it just rotates in over itself over and over again to basically to keep Ukraine afloat, and also to float millions upon millions of dollars to all of these politicians via their children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, so on and so forth. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it in previous episodes, like the high-ranking Democratic officials who have nieces and nephews, children and grandchildren working for Ukrainian energy companies is, it boggles the mind. Like, how do they get away with it? Like how do they so blatantly get away with it, right? Anyway, that's welcome to our government. It's the way shit works. So anyway, this going back to the article, Shulkin Victor Milokovich had filed a complaint against Joe Biden. During the period of 2014 to 2016, the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine was conducting a preliminary investigation into a series of serious crimes committed by the former Minister of Ecology of Ukraine, Mykola Zlochevsky, and by the managers of the company Burisma Holding Limited, the board of directors of which included, amongst others, Hunter Biden, son of Joe Biden, then Vice President of the United States of America. The investigation into the above-mentioned crime was carried out in a strict accordance with criminal law and was under my personal control as Prosecutor General of Ukraine. Owing to my firm position on the above-mentioned cases regarding their prompt and objective investigation, which should have resulted in the arrest and indictment of the guilty parties, Joe Biden developed a firmly hostile attitude towards me, which led him to express in private conversations with senior Ukrainian officials, as well as in his public speeches, a categorical request for my immediate dismissal from the post of Attorney General of Ukraine in exchange for the sum of US $1 billion as a financial guarantee from the United States for the benefit of Ukraine. The facts I have described above are confirmed, amongst other things, by the official interview of Joe Biden published in the media, where he declares that Ukraine will not receive the money if I remain in my post as Attorney General. Throughout the last months of 2015 and the first months of 2016, Joe Biden, taking advantage of his position, came several times on official visits to Ukraine in order to negotiate with the leaders of the country my eviction and consequently the closing of the objective investigation into the offenses committed by persons associated with the company Burisma Holding Limited, including the son of the aforementioned U.S. official. And then there's more into this, which you can, I'm not going to go through all of it. You can read the rest of it on your own. So all of this is to say, look, the stuff that happened was legit. The media poo-pooing and brushing it under the rug and saying, oh, well, the investigations didn't turn anything up, because the investigations were removed from the hands of the people who were actually looking into it and then handed over to people who weren't going to look into it. That way they can make sure nothing came of it, right? That's the way this shit works. Evidence-based medicine and government investigations. They go in with an expectation of what they're going to find, and they make sure that that's what they find. And if they find anything otherwise, they dismiss it as just, that was outside the realm of acceptable results or something. Like, they always find a way to poo-poo it. So that brings us around to the main topic of today's show. In this article right here. Virgin Islands Attorney General fired days after suing J.P. Morgan Chase for facilitating Epstein abuse. The United States Virgin Islands Attorney General Denise George was fired by Governor Albert Bryan. Of course, you got to pay attention to that little D next to his name. Just days after announcing a lawsuit that accused banking giant J.P. Morgan Chase of turning a blind eye to evidence of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sex trafficking operation. George filed a lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase in federal court in Manhattan last week, arguing the financial institution benefited from Epstein's sex trafficking operation and helped conceal activities that occurred on his property by failing to comply with federal regulations on records properly and reporting that may have tipped off Epstein's activities to U.S. officials before they eventually came to light. Financial institutions can connect or choke human trafficking networks, and enforcement actions filed and injunctive relief obtained by attorneys general are essential to ensure that enterprises like Epstein's cannot flourish in the future, George wrote in the complaint. George argued that J.P. Morgan Chase should have thought twice before allowing Epstein to become a client, given that he pleaded guilty to a sex-related charge involving a minor in Florida in 2008. However, on New Year's Eve, Governor Bryan confirmed to several news outlets that George was fired from her position as Attorney General. I relieved Denise George of her duties as Attorney General this weekend. I thank her for her service to the people of the territory during the past 4 years as Attorney General and wish her the best in her future endeavors, Bryan said in a statement. The Virgin Islands Consortium previously reported that George brought the federal lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase without telling Governor Bryan beforehand. I wonder why she would do that. Because if you haven't also noticed in the news a lot here lately, just over the last month or so, a lot of these like crypto or like altcoin millionaire and billionaires who are living in U.S. territories, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, so on and so forth, in the Caribbean islands, have been noticing a lot of sex trafficking types of activities going on and have been saying stuff about it and then turning up dead on the beach within a few days. I mean, that stuff is just far enough out of U.S. jurisdiction, but just enough into U.S. jurisdiction that there's a large degree of control that can still be maintained over them, while also having a large degree of plausible deniability around things that happen in those areas. So, like this is some kind of shady and scary shit that's going on. People familiar with the situation said Mr. Bryan had been frustrated with Ms. George for some time and that her action against the bank was the final straw. Earlier in the month, George announced a $105 million settlement with Epstein's estate, which agreed to pay millions and half the proceeds of the sale of Epstein's private island for allegedly violating the Virgin Islands law against corruption, trafficking, and sexual servitude. George's suit against J.P. Morgan Chase came after two anonymous women filed civil lawsuits against J.P. Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank, alleging that the two banks enabled and benefited from Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring. George was reportedly replaced by Assistant Attorney General Carol Thomas Jacobs, who will now serve as Acting Attorney General. What do you want to bet Carol Thomas Jacobs is not going to be one to shake the boat on anything? So, kind of the moral of the story here with these two combined stories is when you see prosecutors pursuing certain things and then very abruptly getting fired, it's probably safe to assume that they're onto something. Like getting rid of a prosecutor like that is not easy. Usually it would take like some serious allegations of corruption, something that's actually like illegal. But in each of these cases, the only thing that you really have is they are taking a look at things that they're not supposed to look at and probably hitting a little too close to home on the things that they're looking at. And so they have to be removed. The fact that the Ukrainian prosecutor actually survived long enough to file a lawsuit, I need to follow up, because his lawsuit, he filed that in mid to late 2021. I would not be surprised to find out that he's a casualty of the Ukraine-Russia war. I fully suspect that he's probably disappeared at some point in the last year and a half. So I need to go follow up on that and look and see if he's still alive, because I I have severe doubts that he is. And then this um, attorney general for the Virgin Islands, Denise George. Uh, it'd be interesting to pay attention to what happens to her over the next 6 months or so. Um, it's just too convenient to be coincidence that a lot of times when people start digging into this stuff, they suddenly turn up having a car accident or drowning or become suicidal. I mean, I I hope 2023 will be the year of pursuing these sexual deviants, going after the people who are participating in child trafficking and child pornography and the like. I really really hope that people are starting to have their fill of this bullshit and start to push back on it, and not just start to push back on it, but start to say, all right, enough is enough. Like, leave our fucking kids alone. Um, that's really really what I hope. And I'm gonna keep talking about this stuff because I think it is of the utmost importance. Like, this is stuff that everybody needs to be aware of. Just how frequently it's happening, and how many different ways that it's happening, and exactly what's going on, and also understand the complete lack of accountability that the US government in every aspect has taken for any of this, and the complete lack of doing anything that they put into any of this. I mean, it's kind of the running joke with the whole Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell thing that, where's the flight logs? Where are all these lists? Why hasn't anybody that, you know, visited that island multiple times gone to jail? Because they're all important, powerful, rich people who are padding the pockets of the people who would be sending them to jail. There is no accountability at that level. And anybody who might have the balls to hold them accountable also has to take a little bit of a self preservation into mind and think, do I really want to push this so far that I end up as the one who's hanging from a noose in my backyard with a shotgun mysteriously in my hand and a shotgun blast to my chest? You know, things to think about. Folks don't magically hang themselves and still manage to shoot themselves in the chest with a shotgun. Usually get a little help with that. Not saying who. HRC. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about this stuff. I think this is the shit that needs to be at the forefront of people's minds, and I probably need to just reach out to Eliza Blue and actually have her on and have a long in depth conversation about it. The stuff gets a little heavy and it gets a little deep and it gets a little makes me a little uncomfortable, and I don't want to necessarily dig that far into it, but at the same time, God, it's fucked up shit that needs to be talked about. So I'm probably need to just go ahead and bite the bullet and do it. But speaking of getting people on and having interviews, be sure to tune in tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. Central Time, where I will be joined by Jason Rink, and we're going to talk about a ride with Kanye, amongst other things. So tune in for that. That'll be live. And then if you haven't already, go subscribe and tune in for the daily content. Cover, just stuff that's going on in the news day by day. Today's covered the speaker vote and the concessions that the establishment Republicans gave to the holdouts in order to get McCarthy in as Speaker of the House. I think they should have held out forever and just locked the whole fucking thing down and never let it move forward. But whatever. The concessions weren't terrible. I don't know how. We'll see how far they actually go, and we'll see if the holdouts have the balls to do their part when the establishment Republicans renege on these agreements. But anyway, go check that out. I will be back tomorrow live with Jason Rink. And if you miss it live, you can always check it out on Wednesday at 6 a.m. when it comes out on the normal show release. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. We've got a brand new sponsor for 2023, and I am really excited to partner with Agorist Acres. Now, agoristacres.com, you can find over 100 varieties of seeds. They've got vegetables, flowers, all kinds of stuff. They've got heritage brands, everything that you want to start any kind of garden that you need. It's free shipping on any order of $20 or more. They've got cool packaging, and most of the seeds come in a fancy glass vial, no paper envelopes. They accept US dollars and crypto and can easily take either at checkout. Now, be sure to head over to agoristacres.com, and anything that you get, use the promo code FCT at checkout for 10% off your order. I say all the time that you need to be starting your own garden, you need to be growing your own food, you need to be getting off the grid and becoming less dependent on grocery stores and stuff like that. Agorist Acres is a great first start. They have got everything you need for whatever kind of garden you want. Great people, great product, highly recommend. So go check them out.